Exposed, the amazing dark secret of a billionaire CEO that transformed her life forever. Laura Harris stood on the balcony of her luxurious penthouse, overlooking the shimmering waters of San Francisco Bay. To the world, she epitomized success, a billionaire CEO of a tech empire that reshaped modern life. But beneath her polished exterior was a raw turmoil that clawed at her mind. Today, while rifling through her late father's belongings, she had unearthed photographs and old letters that shattered the carefully crafted illusion of her life. The realization hit her like a freight train. Her father, a brilliant engineer, had created a groundbreaking invention that had been ruthlessly stolen by a corporation she now led. The weight of betrayal settled heavily in her chest, drawing out a powerful wave of anger and disbelief. How could she reconcile running a company built upon the very injustice done to her father? As the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting long shadows on the hardwood floor, she grappled with her role within the company. Board meetings that once felt invigorating now felt like confronting ghosts, every smile from shareholders a reminder of her father's stolen legacy. With each presentation, doubts crept in, sowing seeds of confusion. She wanted to lead with purpose but couldn't shake the feeling that she had blood on her hands, blood that belonged to her father's dreams crushed beneath corporate greed. The luxurious life she built felt tainted now, her achievements ringing hollow against the backdrop of her father's stolen brilliance. "Laura," a voice interrupted her spiraling thoughts. It was George, her father's childhood friend and a retired engineer. He always had a way of grounding her, conjuring visions of her father's integrity. As if sensing the storm within, he began recounting her father's passion for innovation, stirring a yearning inside her for a truth long suppressed, a truth she now had to unearth. She needed answers. Should she sacrifice her position to seek justice for a legacy that deserved to be reclaimed? Before she could delve deeper into the ocean of her thoughts, a sudden knock on her office door broke the tension. The urgency in the air prickled her senses. What news awaited her? "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. The moment she resumed her thoughts, a weighty tension loomed larger. An unsettling notification had caught her attention. Confidential documents were missing, documents that threatened the very fabric of her corporation. The implications sent her heart racing. Was she to ignore this breach, saving her empire at the cost of justice? Or was she to confront the truth, risking it all? Laura felt a coil of pressure tighten around her, each board member's face swirling in her mind. Voices of dissent echoed, murmurs of fear and ambition battling within. The stakes had never felt so high, and the clock was ticking. Just as she began her plan of action, the door creaked open, revealing a figure cloaked in shadows. All eyes turned to her. The truth that lay before her could unravel everything, a tipping point between ambition and integrity. Her heart raced, thoughts spiraling into chaos. How far would she go to uncover the truth? Would she dare embrace the legacy of her father amid the overwhelming storm of fear? The figure stepped forward, revealing a familiar silhouette framed by the dim office light. It was Mara, her right-hand woman and a trusted confidant, yet a veil of uncertainty clouded Laura's perception of her. The shift in the room was palpable. As the door clicked shut, the atmosphere thickened with tension. "Mara, what is it?" Laura's voice quaked slightly, revealing a blend of curiosity and dread as she read her colleague's expression. "I just received news from IT. The missing documents are more than just casual files. These are strategic plans that could alter the trajectory of our firm if they fall into the wrong hands." Mara's voice was steady, belying the urgency of their situation. Laura's mind raced. If the documents became public or landed with competitors, it could spell disaster, not just for her, but for her father's legacy as well. The gnawing guilt that had taken residence in her heart swelled again. The cost of silence was escalating, and she could not ignore the moral implications much longer. "What's the protocol for a breach like this?" Laura asked, her voice firm despite her internal chaos. Mara hesitated, as though weighing her words carefully. "We need to launch an internal investigation, but that's going to raise a lot of questions, and trust me, people are not going to react positively to that." "Let them react," Laura snapped, the fire igniting within her once more. "I can't carry on as if nothing is happening. If these documents are being used against us, it's time to confront the truth." The decision hung heavily, but as she made a choice, Laura felt an unfamiliar sense of resolve settling in. Hours spent mulling over her father's legacy seemed to have converged to this point. She needed to act, not just for her company, but for her father, whose passion had been stolen and exploited. As the two women laid out a plan, each scenario unfolded before Laura's eyes like a potential minefield. Would she uncover the truth only to destroy her own empire? Questions swirled, but there remained one clear path. She had to gather evidence, confront the board, and reclaim her father's name. Later that evening, with storm clouds gathering outside her window, Laura felt the weight of her actions. Would her dedication to justice lead her down a path of sabotage? Each passing hour felt like a countdown to something monumental. As the rain began to pour, she sensed a shift in her objectives. This was not just about recovering the stolen documents or appeasing corporate officers. She was on the precipice of embracing her father's vision and confronting the shadows that had plagued her existence. Picking up her phone, she dialed George, needing to hear that familiar voice of reason. "George, I need your expertise," she confessed, her voice shaking slightly. "It's time for me to take a stance." A poignant silence followed, amplifying both her fear and determination. Finally, he replied, "You understand that this could change everything, right? Are you prepared for the fallout?" "Whatever it takes," she stated, the gravity of her commitment ringing true. "This isn't just about me anymore." As she hung up, Laura steeled herself. The revelations ahead promised only uncertainty and conflict. But she would navigate through them both for herself and for the father who had shaped her vision. The next morning, a storm of confrontation loomed on the horizon. Could she truly dismantle the empire of lies without losing her own identity in the process? The weight of her choices bore down upon her as she prepared for the impending storm. Her very future hinged on the next steps. With her heart pounding, she stood at the threshold of her office, ready to face her board members. The moment of truth had arrived. How far would she be willing to go to reclaim not just her father's legacy, but her own? Laura looked down the polished boardroom table, its gleaming surface reflecting the shadows of looming figures. Each board member sat stacked like layers of a game she felt unequipped to play. The stakes quivered in the air, palpable, as they regarded her with varying degrees of skepticism and interest. Deep down, she wrestled with self-doubt. Was she truly ready for this? Just moments ago, she had felt the resolute fire shaping her purpose, but as the tension intensified, that flame wavered. With a deep breath, she smoothed her blouse, willing her composed exterior to mirror her internal shifts. "Thank you all for gathering on such short notice," she began, aware of the quiver that threaded through her voice, attempting to mask it with authority. "We need to address a serious matter regarding the security of our firm's confidential documents." Her gaze moved across the table to meet Mara's supportive nod. This was her chance to drive the conversation. Yet, as she unveiled the existence of the stolen documents, a suffocating mix of fear and anticipation built within her. The shared history of these board members and her father carved a jagged path before her. What if their reactions to her revelation spurred her into a deeper isolation? The room erupted with murmurs. Questions flew. How could this happen? Is management responsible? The inquiries cascaded like a waterfall, and for a moment, she teetered at the edge of collapse. Silence. She finally shouted, the unexpected force of her voice rallying the chaos. The room fell still, surprise etched across every face. This was something she had never done before. The explosive force of her anger had finally broken free, revealing a latent power within her. I didn't come here to cast blame, but to restore our integrity, she continued, her hand steadying on the table. I am prepared to lead an internal investigation to reclaim the stolen strategies. We cannot allow this breach to tarnish not just our brand, but my father's legacy. A chilling silence enveloped the room. The prepared rebuttals dissolved as the board absorbed the gravity of her commitment. The faces that had once been cloaked in skepticism now showed traces of contemplation, perhaps even respect. What was unfurling before her was not only the path to redemption for her father's legacy but also a transformative moment for her own daring to stand firm when others would waver. Conversations resumed, probing her motives. Each inquiry became an opportunity to showcase her competence, her knowledge gradually overshadowing the lingering doubt in her own mind. For the first time, Laura felt not just as a caretaker of her father's legacy but as an architect of her own ambitions. However, just as a flicker of triumph ignited within her, the board's deputy chair, Richard, a man known for his unflinching demeanor, had other plans. Laura, he leveled with a tone that sent shivers down her spine. Do you really think you're fit for this position? Leading an investigation is more than just bravado. What makes you think we can trust you? The accusation cut deeper than she anticipated, and in that instant, the earlier self-doubt resurfaced like a tide roaring against her newfound shore. However, the fire ignited in her chest flared once more, brighter and fiercer. Because I am not afraid, she replied, her voice solid. And because I refuse to watch this firm, my father's legacy, become a casualty of negligence. The tension in the room stretched, a taut line ready to snap. The stakes were higher than ever, with the looming investigation and the potential for collective fallout. Laura's heart raced at the prospect of facing betrayal from colleagues who had been allies for years. As eyes bore into her, she felt the tide shift. Her assertions were instigating implications that could ripple across the corporate landscape. If she succeeded in rallying the board behind her, it would mark the dawn of a new era for her. But if they turned against her, she risked being not only stripped of her dreams but of her father's name entirely. What lay ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, yet she now understood the depth of her choices. How far would she really go to protect what she held dear? As the conversation continued, a thought struck her: she was not merely fighting for legacy anymore but also for her emergence as a leader. A leader capable of standing her ground in the chaotic world of corporate power dynamics. With her resolve steeling in the face of scrutiny, Laura felt a fierce determination bloom within her. The moment for action was close at hand, but only if she could move past the truths hiding in the shadows. How long could she maintain this momentum before her foundations began to crack? The upcoming days would unveil her capacity to wield power transformed, yet she knew the threat of betrayal loomed just as large as an unsupported truth still hidden. Would she uncover what remained concealed in the darkness, or would she falter under the pressure of it all? The boardroom buzzed with renewed energy but with a caution that pressed against Laura like a heavy weight. She felt it acutely, a sense of scrutiny that deepened her resolve yet also made her skin prickle. With the weight of her father's legacy hanging over her, she was acutely aware that any misstep could have dire consequences not just for her career, but for the firm she revered. Clenching her jaw, she listened as Richard engaged the board in muted discussions, his skepticism palpable. How do we know Laura is equipped for this? He questioned, his challenging tone devoid of warmth. His words spiraled through her mind, conjuring her insecurities. What did they see when they looked at her, a capable leader or a mere child trying to fill big shoes? As they volleyed back and forth, Laura forced herself to refocus on the task at hand. They were discussing her proposal yet seemingly dismissing her credibility. The thoughts swirled: could she truly shift their perceptions? Let us vote. Mara's voice sliced through the chatter, a beacon in the murky waters of doubt. Laura has laid out a clear plan. We need to give her a chance to lead. But the hesitance in the air was thick. The board's faces reflected a constellation of emotions, some supportive, others skeptical. It became clear that conviction was not just a matter of belief, but one of perception. Could they see beyond their biases, beyond the shadow of her father? Laura, you've shared your vision, but what about the reality? Richard re-engaged, his gaze unflinching. What data do you have to support your approach? Trust is built on evidence, not aspiration. Her heart thumped an uneven rhythm, tension coiling within. She thought of the late nights she had spent pulling together financial reports and strategic comparisons, but words fluttered in her mind like moths caught in a lamp's light. I believe we have previous case studies to reference. Laura regained her composure, her voice finding strength. With internal investigations, companies can recover over 70% of lost assets and restore stakeholder confidence. My proposal will follow a similar investigative framework. I am ready to stand behind it and implement actions that yield results. The board members glanced at one another, surprise flickering in their expressions. She could feel the scales shifting as if she were slowly gaining ground. Do you have any team members in mind? One board member asked, testing the waters further. Absolutely, she responded, her confidence bolstered by the inquiry. I've already begun to outline a shortlist based on expertise and loyalty to the firm. We need clarity and commitment. I will not proceed without a reliable team. A murmur of approval floated through the room, igniting a warmth inside of Laura, a victory almost tangible. Yet guilt mingled with triumph. A thought nagged at her: what if those individuals were already tainted by the same culture of secrecy? With the board shifting gears to discuss logistics, she felt a swell of energy pulling her attention outside of the boardroom. She needed an ally, a confidant who could help her navigate the tumultuous waters ahead. Someone who hadn't been entrenched in office politics. After the meeting, Laura's mind raced as she stepped into the corridor. Who could she approach? She reflected on her assistant, a quiet yet determined woman, Michelle. Though she had played a subdued role, Michelle had always demonstrated shrewd insight and diligence, rarely caught up in office gossip. Yet another question loomed: could Laura risk revealing her plans too early? Confronting the dark undercurrents might expose them both, yet she felt an odd kinship with Michelle. Trust could either become her strongest ally or her greatest liability. The hesitation lingered, but resolve flooded her veins. Laura marched toward Michelle's desk, determination girding her every step. Can we talk? She inquired, sensing the invisible weight of the moment. As she turned to close the door behind her, a whisper of doubt pulled at her heart. Had she just put herself in the crosshairs? Would she gain pivotal intel or start a chain reaction of unintended consequences? The answer lay ahead, lurking just beyond the threshold. The stakes had risen, and she would soon learn whether confronting the shadows would lead her into light or deeper into the abyss. Can we talk? Laura repeated, the softness of her question belying the turmoil inside. As the door clicked shut, she took a steadying breath. Micro-moments of vulnerability raised goosebumps on her arms. This was not just about confiding, it was the very act of taking a step into uncharted territory. She had to reveal not only her ambitions but the fear that fueled them. Michelle looked up, her brow furrowing slightly, a blend of curiosity and caution crossing her features. Of course, Laura. What's on your mind? Laura took a seat across from her assistant, carefully choosing her words. I need your perspective on something critical. She launched into the uncertainty swirling within her, the pressure of the board's skepticism, her father's legacy, the uphill battle to establish credibility. Michelle listened intently, her eyes narrowing slightly as if weighing the information. Laura's heart raced, aware that she was testing the boundaries of their professional relationship, probing to see if Michelle trusted her enough to stand beside her in this fight. I don't want to disclose everything yet, Laura emphasized, gauging Michelle's reactions as she spoke. But I feel the need to take action. I've got a proposal I think will change our trajectory, but I need support from someone outside the typical power dynamics. I want your insight. Can you help? Silence pulsed in the air, thick like clouds before a storm. Laura felt a rush of anxiety until Michelle leaned forward, a spark igniting behind her usually tranquil demeanor. I'm in. But I want to know everything you have in mind, the highs and the lows. We'll need to strategize. That partnership was almost euphoric. Trust suddenly shifted in the room like a tectonic plate, building assurance in the shaky ground beneath Laura's feet. "Okay," Laura said, a smile breaking through her tension. She pulled out her laptop and began detailing her proposal, explaining it step by step, her words flowing as adrenaline surged through her veins. "What do you think?" she asked, her pulse quickening as Michelle reluctantly paused to assess. "I think you're onto something, but we have to prepare for blowback," Michelle cautioned, her voice firm yet supportive. "You're challenging the status quo, and that doesn't sit well with everyone. Especially Richard." "Then I'll confront it," Laura replied, a newly ignited spark illuminating her eyes. "It's time we had a conversation, not just an annual review." As they fleshed out their plan, Laura was struck by a chilling realization. The intricate webs of secrecy and fear that had permeated the firm were more than just office politics. They had become an autonomous entity, threatening to snuff out anything genuine before it began. "Do you think we can pull this off?" Michelle posed, a tinge of disbelief creeping into her words, her voice quaking slightly. "Not just pull it off," Laura responded, the confidence of her father's legacy emboldening her voice. "We have to expose the truth. We can redefine what this firm stands for, shift the culture." But with each optimistic declaration, doubt lingered at the edges of Laura's mind. If she was going to unveil such a grand undertaking, what more would she have to sacrifice? What price would this unveiling demand? Just as she pondered the potential repercussions, a thought sank like a stone in her stomach. Could she really handle the fallout? Hours slipped by as they devised their counter-strategies, and as Laura finally leaned back in her chair, exhaustion crept in. Yet, despite her fatigue, the embers of possibility glowed. But victory felt distant. Whispers of retaliation assailed her thoughts. Richard and his allies, how far would they go to uphold the old ways? "Let us be cautious," she warned Michelle, her voice now a tightrope of apprehension. "The deeper we dig, the more we might uncover, and it won't always be pretty." Michelle nodded, understanding the weight that hung between them. "We're in it together. Whatever happens, we will face it head-on." With the fate of her vision precariously balanced, her determination ignited brighter. But a stark question loomed large: what other shadows waited, ready to disrupt their fragile alliance? Determined not to falter, Laura resolved to dig deeper, build a more robust strategy. But danger was approaching in ways she couldn't yet foresee. Tomorrow would be revealing, clawing back the layers of secrecy, or it might strand her in a labyrinth from which escape would be impossible. The stakes were now higher than ever. Was she ready for what lay ahead? The moment of confrontation loomed, and Laura felt it like a storm gathering on the horizon. Laura woke early, a gnawing tension twisting in her stomach. The sunlight streamed through the window, a deceptive warmth that contrasted sharply with the frost of uncertainty lingering in her mind. She felt as if the walls of the office were closing in, a claustrophobic reminder of the weight of her intentions. Today's meeting with the board would be pivotal. She gathered her materials, running through her pitch one more time in her head, reassuring herself that change was not only necessary but overdue. Yet self-doubt slid in with quiet persistence. Could she command respect when the very founders of her vision had left a legacy fraught with hesitation? Each decision she made now felt like stepping onto the tightrope of her career. Laura poured coffee into a travel mug, its heat a brief comfort against her anxieties. She recalled Michelle's words from the night before, reassuringly calm: "We have to be ahead of them, Laura. Anticipate the pushback." Their collaboration had propelling her vision forward, but as she contemplated the men and women who would critique her initiative today, a shiver of doubt crept back in. Arriving at the office, the sterile atmosphere pushed against her resolve. Her colleagues murmured about mundane projects, their indifference causing a rift in her focus. Quietly, she walked to her desk and reviewed her notes one last time. It was no longer about just being competent. Laura had to be transformative, to model the change she wished to see. With each passing minute, anxiety morphed into exhilaration, her determination hardening into something tangible. She had rehearsed every argument against Richard's anticipated challenges, crafting well-formed rebuttals that could catch any skeptic off guard. But was she ready to face the man who embodied the old guard, who represented everything she wanted to dismantle? As she waited for the meeting to commence, she noticed the boardroom doors open, revealing Richard's confident stride towards her. The air thickened, and she strained to look composed. He greeted her with a curt nod, the echo of their shared history weighing heavily in the silence between them. Beneath his cordial facade, Laura detected a flicker of indignation. He was right to feel cornered. When all members took their seats, Laura stood, surveying her audience, a blend of allies and potential adversaries. Anxiety intensified as she began her presentation. Lines of data, market trends, and a new strategic vision spilled from her lips. Each point made a deliberate strike, illuminating the shadowy secrets of their operational culture. Yet as Richard's piercing gaze bore into her, she could feel the collective anticipation of the room. "And this is where we can transform," she concluded, locking eyes with Richard. "It's time for innovation, and that requires a fresh perspective." The firmness in her voice betrayed nothing but conviction, even as her heart raced. "But do you not see the risks involved?" "This is a substantial deviation," Richard retorted, conductor of a counterattack that sent a ripple of discomfort through the room. His tone was disarmingly smooth yet carried undercurrents of hostility. "It's a risk worth taking," Laura shot back, surprising even herself. "Otherwise, we merely stagnate. Isn't that the greater threat?" The tension cracked as the board members shifted in their seats, the debate morphing into a fray of contrasting visions. Laura found herself sparring not just for her proposal but for her identity, her burgeoning leadership shaped by the fight against institutional inertia. As the discussion deepened, Laura felt the bloom of a personal revelation. She was entitled to her vision. Her voice could clear a path through the murky politics at play. But with that realization came a disquieting truth: champions of change often became targets. Would her willingness to break the mold place her squarely in the crosshairs? With a fire ignited behind her words, she pressed on, desperation and resolve intertwining. She grabbed onto hope, future meetings where her resolve could still shift the narrative, yet pulled tighter against the fear of what retaliation might follow. The meeting stretched on, each voice only heightening the complexity of her position, not just as a CEO but as a woman ready to confront her own ingrained doubts. Yet as she laid out her vision, she sensed the road ahead would not come without a steep cost. As Laura concluded, she glanced around the room. Allies? Or are they merely observing prey? It would only become clearer as the dust settled. One question resonated, echoing hauntingly in her mind: what were they willing to do to protect the status quo? The room felt stifling as she prepared for Richard's inevitable counterstrike, sensing that the war had only just begun. She gritted her teeth, determined to defend what she stood for. This was more than a corporate meeting, it was a battle for her future, and as she braced for impact, adrenaline coursed through her veins. Unbeknownst to her, one unexpected ally would emerge, complicating everything Laura thought she knew about the fight ahead, a twist that could redefine everything. Would she be prepared for the revelations flaring up in the coming days? The tension in the boardroom hung thick as Laura regained her composure, heart pounding in her chest. She had sparred not just with data, but with her very sense of self. The assertiveness she exhibited was a tectonic shift from how she had once floated under the radar, navigating a landscape dominated by more experienced voices. Now, she faced a question: was she prepared to summon that confidence time and again? As the meeting drew to a close, Richard's thin smile suggested not just skepticism, but a calculated plan. The board members filtered out, some murmuring their opinions, others lingering to offer hollow reassurances. Laura could feel a weight of scrutiny settle on her. Their expressions ranged from admiration to outright concern. Did they see a trailblazer or a risk-taker bent on self-destruction? In the aftermath, Laura found herself retreating to her office, a sanctuary that now felt like a cage. The stakes were rising, and it struck her this was no longer about simply pushing an agenda. She experienced a chilling realization: standing up for her vision might draw her into a deeper struggle, as she potentially alienated those who didn't share her vision. Her reflection in the mirror offered no comfort. The face looking back was a mixture of resolve and vulnerability. Laura sat at her desk, fingers tapping nervously against the polished surface. A shot of adrenaline merged with apprehension. Alleviating her mental burden called for the enlistment of allies, yet who could she truly trust in a world swarming with ulterior motives? The louder voice in her head continued to challenge her, a reminder of her recent fears. Could the blurry lines between ally and adversary still be determined after such a raw display of intent? Throughout the weeks, not only had Laura's professional life turned tumultuous, her personal landscape felt like shifting sands. She focused on developing a more robust support system, seeking guidance from Michelle, who had become more than just a friend. She was transforming into a trusted advisor. Laura needed to tap into every ounce of leadership potential within her, but could she transform that trusted bond into actionable strategies that could withstand Richard's retaliatory waves? Through extensive brainstorming sessions and late-night strategizing, Laura began to identify a network of colleagues within the organization that seemed to lean toward her vision. There was Marcus from finance, quietly passionate about data-driven innovation, and Angela from marketing, who had consistently pushed the boundaries of conventional branding. They were the undercurrents of resistance that could help shift momentum her way, but would they join her cause? As she approached Marcus in the break room one afternoon, she felt the weight of her vulnerability surfacing again. "I need to talk," she said, and he raised an eyebrow, curiosity mingling with caution. "About what's next for the firm and you?" "I'm planning a new initiative, and I think you could play a crucial role." Her voice wavered as she spoke, but beneath it simmered a swell of determination. While Laura spoke, his expressions shifted from skepticism to intrigue. She began to detail her vision not only for the company but for their collective futures. With each passing moment, she realized communication could be her greatest tool. She marveled at how articulating her aspirations ignited a spark within Marcus. Understanding flowed both ways, establishing a bond built on shared aspirations. Months of mingling in the shadows morphed into daring entreaties into uncharted territories. Laura was redefining her career, but the specter of repercussions loomed large. The question remained, could she navigate the impending turmoil without compromising her integrity and resolve? She felt it in her gut. The answers rested at the edge of unexplored territory, waiting to be unveiled. As the days fell together like the rapid ticking of a clock, she prepared for yet another confrontation, one that felt imminent. Laura sensed the weight of Richard's watchful eye growing ever closer, each day enhancing her awareness of the tug-of-war between innovation and the past. Steeling herself, she whispered a silent affirmation. She was becoming something more than she had ever imagined. But a question loomed ever larger in her mind: what price would she pay to actualize this newfound power? Would she be willing to face the turmoil that Richard might unleash in retaliation as she pursued her ambitions? Something deep within her whispered, the showdown was on the horizon. It would take all of her courage to stand firm, and she had to be prepared for the fallout. Would the risks she took lead to triumph or despair? The next challenge awaited, and Laura could feel the ground shift beneath her feet, foreshadowing a battle echoing with pivotal stakes. Would she be ready to embrace the chaos? Sitting on the edge of her chair, Laura felt the tension escalate as the meeting with Marcus drew closer. They had spent hours refining her initiative, but this moment demanded clarity. Vision without execution lay stale, and she recognized the necessity of solidifying her plans into concrete actions. Her apprehension morphed into a focused energy, fueling her determination to confront the obstacles ahead. As she walked to the conference room, 1,000 thoughts swirled within her, each battling for attention. She had transformed from a passive participant into a driving force, but deep down, Laura wondered if she had truly earned her place at the table or if her rise was perchance an illusion. What if it all crumbled? The intricacies of self-doubt clawed at the edges of her exuberance, challenging her every painstakingly built assumption. Entering the room, she felt the air shift, the atmosphere thick with possibility and apprehension. Marcus greeted her with a nod that grounded her momentarily, and their conversation began to unpack the layers of her initiative. She detailed how they could effectively disrupt the industry while aligning with the company's core values. Her delivery was fluid and passionate, the words spilling forth like water from a newly uncovered spring. "I know we can do this, but there's a risk involved," Marcus countered, his brow furrowed. "Richard 1T just let this slide." He'll push back, and hard. For the first time, Laura acknowledged her own stark reality. The prospect of losing everything she had fought for pressed down like an anvil. Yet, buried under that fear was a burgeoning resilience, a fierce resolve ignited by awareness. Each challenge she faced since that board meeting had been a lesson, chiseling away at her insecurities, round by round. "I'm aware," she replied, her voice steady, "but this is bigger than Richard's pushback. This is about the future we want to create." They drew closer to finalizing the outline, the synergy palpable. But as these plans materialized, Laura realized risks extended beyond boardroom confrontations. It entwined her relationships, her reputation, and perhaps even her self-worth. Should disappointment seep into her professional garden, would she remain strong enough to nurture hope? Meanwhile, Michelle's encouragement hovered in the back of her mind, an anchor in the chaotic seas of corporate turbulence. It was within those moments of doubt that Laura recounted their conversations, how Michelle had insisted that true leadership flourished in adversity, that it came alive in response to struggles, and equally important, how vital it was for her to maintain her integrity. Days turned into nights as the clock ticked inexorably forward, pressing Laura into a heightened state of awareness. She continued to reach out to other supporters, presenting her ideas amidst aversion, and embracing tenacity. Each critical conversation felt raw yet necessary. She was perpetually teetering between the exhilaration of empowerment and the dread of condemnation. The pivotal moment came when Laura received a call from Angela, her marketing ally. "I've heard some murmurs," Angela said, her voice laced with anxiety. "Richard isn't just angry. He's plotting something. We can't afford to delay any longer if we want to gain leverage." Sweat beaded on Laura's forehead as tension pierced the air further. Instantly, her earlier confidence began to dissipate like mist replaced by a haunting sense of impending confrontation. It dawned on her, they weren't just locked in professional conflict. This was a battle for the very essence of her ambitions. Could she persuade her growing circle of allies, galvanizing them to stand united against Richard's grip on power? Her heart raced at the thought of leading such a coalition. But could she bridge the chasm of fear with conviction? Determined to capture her growing influence, she needed to decide on a course of action, and fast. As she prepared for the coming conflict, her mind became a battleground of strategy and integrity. What risks would her newfound coalition entail, and what walls would she have to tear down to exist authentically in this hostile environment? Laura knew this was the moment that would either herald her emergence as a leader or mark her as another casualty of corporate warfare. The clock was ticking. The decision hung precariously in the air like fragile glass. Would she embark on the path that could culminate in either liberating triumph or ruin? It was time to cast aside the uncertainty and face the inevitable clash head-on. The storm was upon her, and the price of failure loomed like a dark veil. What action would she take to secure her future, and would it be enough? Laura stood in front of her computer, the flickering screen illuminating the shadows under her eyes. The emails and updates lined up like soldiers awaiting orders, each one a cry for leadership, a testament to the faith her allies had placed in her. With every click, she felt the weight of expectation sharpen her focus, yet a grappling insistence of doubt clung to her thoughts. Was she truly capable of steering this coalition toward success, especially without burning bridges woven from years of collaboration and mutual respect? Her fingers hovered above the keyboard as she drafted messages to her allies, Angela, Marcus, and others who had become instrumental in this precarious maneuver. Each word was imbued with urgency. She needed to mobilize them all, not only to confront the adversarial presence of Richard but to stay committed to the vision that had sparked this movement in the first place. If there was one undeniable truth she had cultivated through this journey, it was that genuine leadership demanded more than simple authority. It required the courage to stand vulnerable, to reveal herself as both a mentor and a student. But as she planned her next steps, Laura recognized that her path was laden with moral ambiguities. Was it justified to dismantle others' opinions in pursuit of her goals? Richard had always been a formidable figure, brilliant, relentless, but what had begun as a simple rivalry scrunched into a potentially damaging confrontation, one that could pit her values against her ambitions. As activism buzzed in her veins, she questioned what it truly meant to be a leader. Would she manipulate the situation to her advantage, or would she remain true to the principles she hoped to embody? She turned to her journal, the pages heavy with reflection. Michelle's voice echoed softly through the clamor in her mind. Integrity is your anchor, Laura. In the times of storm, cling to it. As Laura transcribed her thoughts, she couldn't shake the lingering anxiety. Trust was a currency and forging bonds was her weapon. Yet, what if her desire for progress leaned into a tool of oppression or left devastation in its wake? A knock broke her spiral of contemplation. It was Marcus, his expression casual yet his posture alert. "You've been MIA. We need to finalize our proposal before the meeting with the board," he urged, his tone carrying hints of solidarity but tinged with concern. "Let us huddle in the lounge." "I've had some ideas," Laura replied, her heart pounding at the prospect of sharing her drafts. Perhaps standing before her peers, articulating her intentions, would bolster her confidence. In those moments, her internal dialogue shifted. This wasn't merely about outmaneuvering Richard. This was her opportunity to create a transparent dialogue that rooted itself in collaborative improvement rather than divisive tactics. As they settled into a corner of the lounge, a communal space that bridged the gap between division and connection, Laura presented her vision with renewed fervor. Each point she articulated stemmed from her core beliefs and revealed a version of herself that she was still discovering, yet, the tightening knots in her chest betrayed her self-assurance. As responses flowed, she listened intently, from supportive feedback to challenging questions. The blend of concern and enthusiasm wrapped around her, it transformed the room into more than a discussion. It became a crucible for alliances, a live experiment in forging a path forward amidst uncertainty. However, as they concluded, having solidified a plan to counter Richard's impending pushback, whispers of discontent surfaced. "Laura, if it comes down to sides, make sure you know which we stand on," Angela warned, her voice barely above a whisper but with a clarity that cut through the fog of bravado. And in that moment, the weight of what lay ahead became more than just a professional challenge. It transformed into a crucible of personal test, one that would challenge her core beliefs and clarify her purpose. What would she sacrifice in pursuit of her vision, and how? Far was she truly willing to go? As Laura looked into her allies' faces, she could feel the tremor of change brewing. The clock kept ticking, but now it echoed with the urgency of not just action but of accountability. She mustered her resolve, knowing the confrontation with Richard was inevitable, and maybe, just maybe, she'd have to confront more than just him. "Tomorrow, we prepare for war," she declared, a steely determination replacing the earlier trepidation. "But we will do it our way, the right way." Yet, in her gut, a flicker of doubt loomed, whispering that doing things the right way could cost her more than she was prepared to pay. Could this path lead to liberation or condemnation? Tomorrow would reveal the answer, and as night consumed the office, Laura felt the undeniable pull of fate nudging her into the fray. Would her conviction withstand the trial ahead, or would it fracture under the weight of unyielding ambition? Laura stood at the helm of her restored empire, a new dawn breaking over the horizon. The boardroom, once a stifling cage of doubt and corporate conspiracy, had morphed into a sanctuary of innovation. In the past months, she had unearthed reserves of strength and resolve that propelled her into the role of a leader, a champion of integrity. Now, the echoes of her father's legacy resonated throughout the halls, reverberating with the truth she fought to preserve. The internal investigation she spearheaded had culminated in a revelation that shook the foundation of the corporation. Transparency became a guiding principle. Despite the resistance from Richard and his allies, Laura had fortified her position through relentless advocacy. Each presentation and strategic discussion ignited a camaraderie among the board members, who, instead of viewing her with skepticism, began to recognize the strength of her vision. More than just winning over doubters, she had crafted a coalition united by a shared goal: to redefine the company's ethos. Each initiative was rooted in honesty and respect, highlighting the detrimental consequences of silence and greed. Within her, an innate talent for leadership emerged, characterized by an unwavering commitment to ethical practices. The transformation from a passive participant to a commanding presence had been profound. It marked the rebirth of Laura Harris, not just as a CEO, but as a pioneer for change. The board meeting that loomed ahead would be a significant milestone. It was not merely a final argument for her initiatives, it signified the culmination of her metamorphosis. Today, she would not be intimidated by Richard's influence. Instead, she would present comprehensive data detailing the success of her reforms, a stark contrast to the corporate stranglehold her father had endured. As she strode confidently into the boardroom, the air buzzed with anticipation. Board members shuffled papers, nervous glances darting around the room. Standing at the front, Laura took a moment to absorb the shift in dynamics. She was anchored in her purpose. A flicker of vulnerability lingered, yet it had woven into a resilient tapestry of confidence and purpose. Her voice, steady and commanding, broke the silence. Thank you all for being here. Today, we define who we truly are as a company. With precision, she began detailing the growth metrics resulting from her new initiatives, evidence documenting success from transparency in communication to improved teamwork, a stark juxtaposition to what had flourished under Richard's shadow. This was not just a plea for acceptance, it was a proclamation of identity and vision. Richard's familiar scowl emerged, an anchor of dissent in the sea of support. Yet, as Laura glanced around the room, she noted subtle shifts, faint nods, glimmers of realization. The narrative was changing, and she could sense the uncertainty creeping into Richard's facade, a crack in the once solid bastion of opposition. Are you suggesting we dismantle successful strategies? This is mere idealism, he retorted, seeking a foothold to undermine her momentum. Laura's response flowed seamlessly. She articulated how ethical leadership fosters loyalty, reduces turnover, and ultimately, nurtures innovation, metrics he had overlooked in his blind pursuit of profit margins. They were no longer just numbers, they were a testament to their collective integrity. The board's inquiry shifted. Rather than questioning her authority, they began to explore her vision. Prometheus, the titan who dared to bring fire to humanity, had ignited a flame of possibility within each member of the boardroom. This couldn't merely be about principles, it required action. Let us reclaim our legacy, honor my father's work not through nostalgia, but through meaningful revolutionary practices today, Laura proposed. The words hung in the air, a delicate challenge poised between tradition and progression. A decisive vote followed, camaraderie solidifying amidst a soundtrack of lingering tension. The outcome was more than she had dared to hope for. Richard's ties to the board diminished, his influence waned as new alliances formed. It was indeed a watershed moment, a tangible acknowledgement of the shift she had fought for. As the meeting adjourned, applause and acknowledgement washed over her like a tide. The collective sense of accomplishment burgeoned. She not only saved her father's name but had also woven her narrative into the fabric of the company's future. Laura felt a profound fulfillment surge through her, a blend of lightness and strength that had long eluded her. With tears brimming in her eyes, she stepped out. The sunlight casting a golden glow across the horizon was a symbol of clarity and progress. It whispered promises of uncharted paths and endless possibilities, the chaos that had characterized her tenure subordinate to the profound purpose guiding her now. She had indeed conquered her fears, transforming a hidden legacy into a beacon of transparency and potential for all at her firm. Laura Harris was no longer just a name, she had etched herself into the annals of integrity and ingenuity in the corporate realm. Now more than ever, she felt ready to embrace the depths of her ambitions, aware that growth never ceased. This moment was not a conclusion, but a chapter of ongoing evolution where her father's spirit intertwined eternally with her journey toward authentic leadership. You need to subscribe now to witness more exclusive, transformative stories like Laura's. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us unveil even more inspiring narratives. Comment below with your thoughts and theories about this empowering conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this transformation.